Hi, Terry here again. I've been going through a book again that I go through from time to time, written by Brian McLaren. He wrote a book from 2020 titled Why Don't They Get It? Why Don't They Get It? Overcoming Bias. And I change it when reading it myself to say, why don't I get it? Or why don't we get it? Overcoming our bias or our biases. His premise is, in the introduction, people can't see what they can't see. We all have a whole set of assumptions and limitations, prejudices and likes, dislikes and triggers, fears and conflicts of interest, blind spots and obsessions that keep us from seeing what we could and would see if we didn't have them. The name for these unconscious internal obstacles that keep us from receiving or listening to fresh ideas, he calls them bias. Bias makes us resist and reject messages we should accept and accept messages we should resist and reject. In short, we can't see what we can't see because our biases get in the way. And changing it again to the personal tense. That I have a whole set of assumptions and limitations, prejudices and likes, dislikes and triggers. I have a whole set of fears and conflicts of interest, blind spots and obsessions that keep me from seeing what I could and would see if I didn't have them. I live with biases. And bias makes me resist and reject messages I should accept, and accept messages I should resist and reject. I would change that a little bit. Bias makes me resist and move away from or be suspicious of messages that I could pay attention to. And it makes me, without even thinking about it, accept messages that I should resist or think twice about. In short, I can't see what I can't see because my biases get in the way. Obstacles to ideas. And perhaps the best way to dig into these biases, what that means is by, and he lists 13 of these biases. The first one he calls confirmation bias. He says we judge new ideas based on the ease with which they fit in with and confirm the only standard we have. Or putting it different ways, we judge new ideas based on the ease with which they fit in with our old ideas, old information, and trusted authorities. So he says confirmation bias says, if this fits what I already believe, yeah, good, I like it. I like it. If it doesn't fit, there's like an auto response that says, don't pay attention to that, move away from it, reject that. He says, as a result, our framing story, belief system, or paradigm excludes whatever doesn't fit. Oh, it means we're not learning new perspectives. We're not expanding to go beyond where we've been. It says we all have filters. What do I already believe? Does this new idea or piece of information confirm what I already think? Does it fit in the frame I've already constructed? If so, I can accept it. But if it doesn't fit with what I already believe, in all likelihood, I'm simply going to reject it as unreasonable and unbelievable, even if rejecting it is, well, unreasonable. So I look at that in my own life. It just says I need to be careful because there's something built into me, somehow as part of the humanity or part of, it's not exactly upbringing or developmental stage, that says I will tend to be attracted to what confirms what I already believe, confirmation bias. Or if it doesn't confirm what I believe, if it pushes at it, if it tugs at it, if it's a different perspective or belief or value, that I am going to automatically reject it. because it's easier to live that way, it's easier to think that way. So it just says to me that I intentionally work to move around some of these biases or these obstacles, or let information flow, and just say, and I pay attention if I automatically get upset over something or reject something. What's that about? Is that a confirmation bias? So for example, in the morning I read 3 or 4 different sources of news. And I read the different editorials and so on, and then I try to sit with it. So if something that I disagree with, or something bothers me, or something I push back very hard, I try to not let that be autopilot. I sit with it and wonder where are they coming from? What are they? How do they see life? What can maybe I learn from them? How does this press what I believe? How does this maybe modify or expand what I believe? So I'm careful with the sources of news. I think of them as hard forms and soft forms. If they're hard forms of news that say, this is the only perspective that's true, and anybody who doesn't believe it is an idiot, and calls me names or belittles what my bias, let's say what my bias is, I look for softer forms, people that can somehow say, this is what I believe. This is my perspective. These are my values. And then doesn't say these are the only possible true, everybody else is an idiot, everybody else is lost or from hell, whatever their terminology. I look for softer forms, but I look for softer forms in a broader perspective. Those that I know I disagree with, that doesn't fit, but then sit with, just listen to wonder what's going on. So a broader sense of news sources without getting into the extremes, or moving into this little neighborhood, which is new and people are coming from all over. I recognize how easy it is for me to want to hang out with neighbors that think the way that I do, that believe the same things, that have the same perspective, have the same values. But recognizing that there are other cool folks, people fun to be around, but knowing that they have a different perspective. Different political perspective, different religious perspective, and sitting with them as well. And there are some wonderful, warm folks with a softer version of what they believe. It doesn't mean that anything's okay with them, but it does say that they're gentler with it, that they're willing to share it without condemning other perspectives. So it's recognizing to hang out with people that I might disagree with and just listen, just pay attention and care for. So for me, it's confirmation bias, and just recognizing that my tendency is going to move toward things that affirm what I already believe. So with my own religious perspective, coming from the Christian tradition and certain stage of faith development within that, to recognize that that is going to be a bias. So it's learning to sit down in the morning and listen to mystics from all sorts of different traditions. And sitting with them and say, oh, I hadn't thought of that before. That doesn't quite fit with where I've come from. And say, oh, that doesn't mean it's wrong. That just means that it's going to take a little bit more to sit down with, to wonder about it, to pay attention to it. So I wonder if you are open to thinking about that and just saying, do I spend all my time letting information, letting people in that confirm what I believe, or am I open to letting people and idea in, people in that don't agree with? It doesn't mean I have to accept everything. Absolutely not. I don't, just because I let it in, but it means I listen to. I try to remain teachable, that what I believe, recognize, is incomplete, that my ideas aren't perfect, that my values and perspectives always have room to grow. So confirmation bias. So I'm going to wonder about that this week, and I encourage you to maybe think about it a little bit as well. And remember, if you really want to dig into it, I think you have to probably get it from his website, but Brian McLaren, Why Don't They Get It? Overcoming Bias. And I changed the title in my mind to saying, Why Don't I Get It? Overcoming My Bias. So, confirmation bias, openness, not to let everything filter in unthought about, uncontemplated, but allowing ourselves to be stretched. I would say even allowing ourselves to be annoyed by different ideas, to feel the upset and wonder where that's coming from. So let's keep growing. Let's keep wondering. Let's keep expanding. Let's remain teachable. Talk to you next time.